fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren.
Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Okay, we're back now with our guest, Samantha Harris, and she's the demonologist and author, and has her own company. Let's get into this. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Alan. Thanks for having me on the show. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, it's actually an honor to have you. I just love having you here. This is great. It's a subject I sort of wanted to get into before, and never had the guest, really qualified like this. And so now the first thing I want to get into is like now a demonologist. So what exactly is that?
Well, demonology is kind of like all the other ologies. It's the study of something. And so demonology is basically the study of demons. And what's interesting is most oftentimes people will think of, fallen angels or evil entities, but demons back in the day actually referred to angels as well too. But there's angelology and separate subjects and stuff. But what I specialize in focus on is really the removal of severe hauntings and studying demonic hauntings in severe cases in which people are being, physically harmed, and where the hauntings gotten to such a point where their life's being controlled and they really can't move forward. They're at like the end of their rope. And so oftentimes I'll get requests and referrals to these cases in which maybe another paranormal group wasn't able to deal with it or didn't feel comfortable with it, or maybe a church member or clergy member sent the case over to me, or sometimes we do have churches that are unsure, are unable to help with the client, and so we get a lot of forwarded cases over to our group as well. And so, yeah, basically I just study demons in severe cases in particular and try to remove those for people and improve their lives.
Wow. So how would you describe a demon then? Like, what is it exactly that you're looking for in a demon? I guess that's kind of a weird way of saying it, but
no, and it's hard too because with the paranormal field, a lot of this stuff's all like theory. Can we actually prove this 100%? In terms of scientific evidence, it's a little tricky sometimes, especially with demons. But a demon to me is a very ancient entity or a spirit, basically. But to me, it's an inhuman force. It never had walked the earth as a human. It's never lived as a person like you and I have. And the objectives of these entities, these evil forces, basically, really is to break down people's faith, their happiness, their health, even finances. And it kind of sounds goofy and abstract, but when you look at the entire overall picture of a family, when they have a demonic haunting, it really does affect every aspect of their life. And so what I'm looking for in cases are they severe? Are they violent and negative in nature? Are they sacrilegious? So say if someone is, praying or has a religious item in their home, is it being targeted by the entity? And there's just different characteristics and traits I'll look for to help discern between if it's a human spirit or if it's inhuman or demonic in nature. And so that's really what I look for. And usually I'll counsel with the family or client beforehand and try to pinpoint where the haunting happened. And oftentimes a lot of the cases that I work on include families that are severely dysfunctional. We have issues of alcoholism or substance abuse or domestic violence or chronic illness even. And on occasion you have people that just move into a residence and there's a demonic entity residing there. So it just depends, but it's a lot of putting different pieces of a puzzle together to really figure out and pinpoint, the origins and why the entity's there.
Right. So is it like, is there a religion that's connected with demons? Like a lot of people think, okay, a demon's part of the devil, and so do you have to have a belief in a religion?
I don't think so. I mean, the concept of demons, honestly, is like a global, worldwide thing. You know, they have different names around the world. For example, in the Middle East, you know, people believe in what are known as jinns, or what we refer to as genies. But what's interesting is there's various beliefs whether a genie can choose to be good or bad. Whereas kind of more of a Western view of demons, or that they're evil and that they've fallen from grace from God. And it's actually kind of stems more from a Catholic view. And the reason why that happened is back in like 560 AD to about 600 AD is when demonology actually kind of first started happening, in which the church started assigning names and hierarchies for demons. But, you know, demonology didn't really come onto the map until like the 1970s with Ed and Lorraine Warren, with their famous Amityville horror case. So it varies, but really, you know, the Warrens are Catholic. But it just depends. I think, a lot of people around the world believe in these entities, so it doesn't really require a certain religion, but our Western view really does tend to be Christian, Catholic, or Abrahamic in nature.
Right, right. Well, it's just because I do get, you know, a lot of people always are asking questions or sending into the radio station, and they're always asking questions about that. And a lot of people think that they've got demons in their, you know, or they're being followed and stuff like that. And but they have no religion, right? They don't believe in a god per se or anything like that. So
well, there's like a lot of Christians that believe in demons, and sometimes it's interesting too, and not to hopefully not to offend anybody, but a lot of some Christians believe that, you know, all spirits, including human spirits, are demonic and evil, whereas, you know, other people believe that there's a difference between demons and ghosts and stuff like that too. And most of them tend to be Christian, I would say. You know, it's interesting. I've actually worked on a couple cases, and one in which involved an atheist who believed in life after death, but just not God, and was dealing with a demonic entity. But it was interesting. So I think it just depends on each person's views, but oftentimes, yeah, I would say it's like a Christian Catholic type of background for most people that believe in demons, I think, in here in America.
Right. So when you get these investigations or something, or where someone contacts you or about a demon or some real bad entity that you've got, how do you discern? Like, how do you pick out that it would be a demon or you know, not something else? Or is there certain indications that really stick out?
Right. Well, I did study, I have a background actually in abnormal psychology, but my degree's in communications. But I really took that course just because it's so, in many courses, but that specification and field, because it's really important to make sure that you're not dealing with, you know, a mental illness to begin with, you know, or maybe it's a side effect from medications, or maybe they are having, you know, visual hallucinations or things like that. So you want to narrow that down first too. And then usually I'll go through a list of characteristics. You know, are people being scratched and burned? Are there violent attacks? Are they having reoccurring nightmares? You know, things like that, to see if it's more demonic in nature. And this one, I'm going to throw my credibility out the window here. But, you know, ever since I was little, I've had, you know, what I call like psychic experiences. I don't really consider myself a psychic or a medium per se, but I do have some abilities that I just haven't harnessed. And ever since I started working on demonic cases, almost every single true demonic case I've worked on, I had like a premonition or a nightmare the night before this person ever contacted me regarding the case. So it was like, I would have no idea that person's going to contact me the next day. And that entire night, I would have horrific nightmares of a demonic entity. And then I go to my inbox and I'll find a request for help with possibly a demonic case. And it turned out to be, you know, a demonic entity. So to me, it was interesting. It started to follow a pattern. I'm like, well, maybe that's a good heads up on what I might be dealing with. And also there's as goofy as it sounds, there is a feeling of discernment when you come into the house. To describe the presence of a demon is so difficult, but it's literally like being locked in a jail cell with like Hannibal Lecter and you're Clarice or something. It is like the worst feeling ever. And I try to make light of it because it's just so terrible. But you know, everything in your body is telling you to get out of the house, like just for your safety and survival. But you got to stay there to help the family, you know? And so, yeah, usually I can sense the entity or the demon when I'm in the house. And even before that, like even before I get to a case, I've had, 2 occasions now, at least, where I've had an entity or a demon actually show up at my house before I performed a house blessing for the family. And I think it was kind of to try and like scare me off, you know, because they don't want you helping these families or clients because that's like their prey, you know.
Right. What do you think what is it they're out for then? If they're not like a ghost or a relative or something passed from a person, what is their objective, you might say?
I mean, I think it sounds pretty intense or maybe outlandish to some people to say like, oh, they want to claim your soul type thing. But I really do think that their role here, they play off like the weak and the ill in a way, and that, you know, they encourage an alcoholic to have another drink. Why not? You know, things like that where they break down your life and they feed off these people and families. They feed off negative energy. So they'll actually create fights or scenarios in which just the overall happiness and health and finances of family starts to degrade, and they thrive in situations like that. I really think it is to break down people's faith and happiness and just drain them of their essence, I guess, in life. And, you know, sometimes it does result in possession, but demonic possession is so rare. Oftentimes it's demonic oppression, and really these entities come into these homes to oppress the families and to really wreak havoc and torment them. You know, just the idea of destroying and isolating them. That's really, I think, their objective 90% of the time. And just unpleasant. Doesn't make sense to us. You know, we have like logic and reasoning and empathy, you know, and compassion for people, whereas demons don't care, and they have a goal and they're set on achieving that.
So then in a possession, do you have to bring someone in for that? Like, or what's kind of, if that happens, where do you have to go for that?
I mean, oftentimes, and I do not want to bash on churches or anything like that, but at least with Catholic exorcisms, it's very difficult to get an official exorcism passed. I mean, you have to have hard evidence. You have to deal with the diocese, the local people, like group and organization, and it gets passed on. There's a lot of waiting usually, and oftentimes they don't get approved. So there's actually a lot of people out there nowadays that will perform like unofficial exorcisms. On the cases that I've worked on closest to an exorcism in terms of possession, it was really borderline. It was a 19-year-old boy and his family, and it was really borderline between demonic oppression and possession because, you know, he would have periods where he would just black out, you know, and couldn't control his body, was swearing, became violent, you know, it took so many people to try and control him, you know, to me it sounded possession. And so anyways, but it actually worked with a house blessing. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, a house blessing, that's just for a home. But really, the approach that I take and kind of put together is that I counsel with the family. I get everyone working as a team. And we're really cleansing the people's lives, and they're reclaiming their home and their life. And it's a very spiritual therapeutic experience. And even though it's, you know, quote unquote a house blessing, it really is cleansing the people and exorcising the entities from themselves as well too. And it works. You know, I do believe there are cases where you still need an official exorcism, and thankfully I haven't had to resort to that, so that's good.
Yeah.
But it does happen, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what is there that you do, let's say for protection or stuff like that, or is there a specific way to go about it, or is there something you tell also people you go to that they can do?
Right. Well, I've taught a lot of people, if, you know, I'm not in their area or it's been across the world, you know, I have people from even Africa and over in Europe, stuff like that contact me. You know, I teach them online, and I also list free instructions on my website on michiganpra.com. I teach them, you know, different house blessing methods, and the one that I've used that works for me, you know, I've performed over 80 some odd house blessings, and with a 98% success rate. And out of the two that really didn't work, you know, there was issues where, you know, they continued to have, you know, alcoholism or things like that are out of our control, you know. But yeah, so I try to teach people how to protect themselves and to perform their own house blessings. What I do for myself, you know, I kind of have, I kind of go into like a meditative state, you know, and I pray to, you know, God, Great Spirit, whatever divine creator people believe in. You know, I pray to God and I ask for protection, and I do call in Michael, the archangel, and, you know, the divine ministry basically to protect me during this stuff. But interestingly enough, since working on demonic cases, the series of bad events and mysterious illnesses that I've had to deal with seem to like uncanny to me. But granted, yes, it could just be coincidence. But so sometimes you're like, well, maybe there isn't 100% protection. It does take a toll on you when you work on these cases.
Right. Well, it's got to. It's like anything in life, right? That you're doing.
Right.
So now, where did you get your start? Like, how did you get into this sort of area?
Right. And I think it's funny, too, because a lot of people are like, you're only 25. Like, this is so weird. I'm like, I know. I know. It's interesting. I think sometimes, honestly, demonic, spiritual warfare. I mean, that's really what it is. Aside from studying it, I mean, I'm actively involved in removing these things. And, it's not me doing it. I believe it's our divine creator that works through me to do this stuff. But yeah, when I got my start, I would have to say the first time I worked on a demonic case was when I was 17 years old. But before that, when I was about 11 years old, I captured this image of a female spirit apparition, and like I was just dumbfounded. I was like, oh my God. And I took it to this photography specialist who's worked there for 30 years, and he's like, I think you've got something legitimate. It's not a double exposure, all this other stuff. And to me, it was just so fascinating. And I had already had seeing spirits and hearing things and paranormal psychic stuff since I was young, since about like 3 or 4 years old, actually. So by 11 years old, I kind of had an idea something weird was going on outside of our perceived realm of existence. And from there, I just really dove into research and case studies and actually investigating things. And I guess what led me into the severe hauntings was that I would investigate these homes and, verify, like, yes, these people have a spirit in their home. And I just felt terrible saying, like, confirming that and then just leaving. I was like, what can we do to help and push this further? Like, how about we get rid of it, and put people to peace, like both the living and the dead. And so I started working on that. And when you start to deal with more paranormal cases, eventually you tend to run into something evil. And I wanted to be prepared for that. So I studied so many different religions and cultures and really started to put together a method for the most potent methods from all these different religions and cultures to remove these demonic entities. And so I really started focusing in on it after I was about 17 years old and just started working on cases, I guess.
But how was that as a teenager? Like, how was it in your life then? Like, I mean,
right.
How do you date?
I try not to bring it up. I'm a very friendly, like warm, loving person, but yeah, it is definitely weird. And, I feel better though, because most people, like, what is it, 73% Americans, believe in the paranormal and stuff. But it is more difficult when you bring up demonology, because that's like a subgroup of the paranormal umbrella. And so for people to believe in that, and it sounds so medieval, it makes us think of like, what they used to do back in like the psych wards and stuff. Prior to that, blaming everything on demonic possession and demons and stuff. And I'm glad we've moved away from that, but there's still stuff that I really do consider demonic hauntings and cases that I cannot explain scientifically. But yeah, I had a great childhood growing up and stuff, and I was actually somewhat pretty normal. and it was just something I kind of did on the side. My friends like are freaked out about, so we just don't talk about it, and I respect that, and I don't want them to be scared, and stirring up, negative fears and stuff like that too. But yeah, and so I try to live a life outside of it, but to be honest, like every day for hours, I have email responses to do and people asking for help. And to be honest, it's like, it's hard because, you need to work and pay the bills and stuff. But for this, I do it for free. I just ask for people to make a donation to cover my supplies or gas and, driving expenses and stuff like that. But other than that, it's hard to make a living and work in this, but I feel such a calling to do it, to help people. It feels rewarding,
Yeah. Do you ever think of getting into TV or movies or anything like that?
Yeah, I like that segue. It's a good lead in. I saw that. You were talented. So,
I've done this before.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, back in like 2009, I got like my first taste of filming because I was actually offered the sequel to Paranormal State for, I think it was the A&E network. And anyways, so that fell through because of the contract. I was not a big fan of it. And since then, over the years, I've been offered several different television shows, but it'd be goofy things like, girls in bikinis and paranormal stuff. And you're just like, ugh, this would be a slap in the face to the paranormal community, and I really want to be thorough and ethical and legitimate and really hopefully make some progress in the paranormal community if I ever were to do a show. So excitingly enough, next month I'll be flying out to LA to be filming a sizzle reel for a possible television show. And a sizzle reel is like a brief little 3 to 4 minute highlights film of what the show would be about and the characters and stuff like that too. And it's the first show that I'm really excited about possibly doing because it actually includes an aspect of my dream show, which kind of includes like, teaching about spiritual topics and things like that, because I think that would help evolve our society greatly. And so I'm excited about that. So we'll see if any of the networks pick it up. But I think a television show would be great. I mean, there's pros and cons too, because you don't know how the editing is going to turn out and if it makes you look like a Fruit Loop or not. But I think it would help educate people and help them realize that they can help themselves. Like, you don't have to be some holy ordained person. Like, I literally teach people all the time how to do this on their own. And it's more potent when people perform their own house blessings, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that it would kind of just raise awareness about how people can deal with this and they don't have to live with these severe hauntings. Because some of my clients, oh gosh, they've had hauntings for over 10, 15 years on up, and I just don't know how they do it. So we'll see if we're going to be doing television stuff. One of my cases was featured on Discovery Channel's A Haunting, and I think it aired on Destination America, but I think it's season 5 or season 6, but the episode's called Blood Visions, and they did a great job on keeping true to the story. The acting is a little different. Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting to be able to do that. And just from that episode, I've had so many people contact me and excited about learning how to do their own house blessings and are really appreciative about it. So that makes me happy. Yeah,
it can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing, but
right.
I mean, that's good. Okay, well, we'll take a break and we'll come back and get a little more into it. Thanks.
Sounds great.
Okay, and we're back now. And now we were left off talking a little bit about movies and TV and stuff. Now, I was just wondering what your impression is of how TV and movies and media in general kind of represent demonology and even the whole ghost hunting field. How you think it sort of is portrayed? Is it true to life, or do you think not really, or?
I think it depends on each different production or show or whatever. But there's truth to a lot of them, but there's so many different fabrications and embellishments and stuff like that too. And what worries me, first thing, I'm really excited and happy that, the paranormal and demonology even are becoming more socially acceptable and talked about, because I remember when I was younger, we had like X-Files, and then that was it. And then this big boom in paranormal shows, it's really opened up a line of communication, whereas back in the day, you'd get thrown away in the insane asylum, for talking about these things. So I think that has made a lot of progress in the paranormal community and in society as well by having these Hollywood films and television shows. But then there's setbacks too, where, it might imprint or put a bad idea in someone's head, for example, like Paranormal Activity, where, they're messing with the Ouija board and stuff like that. And so people see that and they're like, oh, that's fake. And, maybe their friend challenges them, well, no, it's totally real, let's try it. And they go and buy it, and they don't really learn or respect the process involved. Like, protect yourself. Don't just, do divination or spirit communication without protection, things like that. And so I think it can also lead people to getting into trouble. And one of the shows I remember was on for a really brief moment, and I started some petition, and I had a bunch of other people write them too. I think it was on A&E, but it was like Extreme Paranormal. And if I remember right, the guy cut himself and was bleeding on the floor trying to summon a demon. And I'm just like, oh my God, what a terrible idea. Where is Hollywood going with this? So I got upset about that. But in terms of, demonic hauntings and stuff, like The Exorcist, I feel like that is fairly accurate. Exorcism of Emily Rose. A lot of the characteristics that they show in those movies are pretty accurate. The demon doesn't let the host or the victim or the demoniac really eat or anything. They starve them out. They, sometimes have writing on their body, mysterious scratches and burns, arcane and ancient language that they sometimes speak in, such as like Latin, stuff like that. There are, the top characteristics that they show tend to be pretty accurate, although demonic possession is rare. And they've kind of made it seem like a common thing. It is rare. And, but yeah, most of the time, I think there is truth to a lot of the films that they put together, but there's exaggerations, like for The Conjuring, for example, they piled together different types of, incidents or, pieces of different cases and piled it into one movie, and then also embellished things as well too. So yeah, so sometimes they just have to do that to keep the movie going and to keep people entertained. But it'd be great if they could stick to the truth, Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? One that you think's like all-time favorite of yours, movie? Or?
This one's not really well known. Okay, well, this is off topic. One of my favorite like horror films is probably Evil Dead. It's like a cult classic, and it doesn't even count towards what we're talking about. But it's one of those movies that's so bad it's good. That's why I love it. And of course, it was produced by a fellow Michigan State Spartan, so I'm very, very happy with that. But one of my favorite movies, honestly, was Session 9. And it's about an abandoned insane asylum that this crew begins to work on abating or removing asbestos from. And slowly but surely, this demonic entity that resides in the insane asylum starts working away at these people's sanity, and they don't even realize it. And to me, it kind of personified how demons really do function. They're very quiet and silent, usually. Most people don't even know they're there. And that's how they want it to be, because, if they leave evidence all the time and they're noisy, people are going to reach out and look for help and try to remove that entity. And so demons don't want that. So I think it's interesting to see how demons can play on people very subtly. So that's why I kind of like that movie too. But of course, The Exorcist is a classic. I love that. I was a weirdo and watched it in 5th grade in the basement by myself, like a weirdo. So it scared the crap out of me, but I was just like, oh my God, And so I think that's another reason why I'm okay with working in this line of work. I've kind of like desensitized myself in some ways where, to me, it's just kind of normal, these like terrifying things. And they still scare me, but it's not as bizarre,
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's now you mentioned the Ouija board. So what's your belief in that?
It's interesting. I mean, to me, it's a form of divination or spirit communication. And, going back to like, civilizations of ancient times and stuff, divination and spirit communication has been around for so long. And I hope I'm not offending anyone else either, but I have a very strong belief that there are differences between spirits. Like I do think there's demons and I do think there's human spirits. And I think that spirit communication can be actually sometimes a very healing thing. I've seen psychics and mediums that have turned someone's life around. This person wanted to commit suicide because, their daughter committed suicide themselves, and she felt so lost without her child. And this psychic medium was able to connect with her daughter and reassure her that there is life after death, that she really was connecting with her daughter. And it reaffirmed this woman's belief in God. And to me, like, how could that be evil? So, in terms of the Ouija board, I think I refer to it as being like a telemarketer. Like you are dialing all these numbers and you don't know who's going to answer. And I do believe there are entities out there that are just like waiting to answer the phone, like 1-800-DEMONS, and they're just excited to answer. And so sometimes, unfortunately, you can open up a door of communication and they can come into your life like that. And so some hauntings, including what The Exorcist is actually based off of, really do originate from the Ouija board, in which maybe a demon presented itself as like a child spirit. It's like, oh, my name's Timmy, I'm 6 years old, my parents died, can you help me find them? Can I stay in your house? And they're like, oh, it's a little boy spirit, it's cute, or somehow they think it's cute. And then it turns, it progresses into something violent and dark, and eventually the entity kind of reveals itself as what it is. So I always warn people to be careful, to use protection before and after spirit communication, to make sure you're calling upon divine entities rather than malevolent, dark things, and to really just say some prayers or do whatever you're comfortable with to protect yourself and just set up that boundary.
Right. Now, so you mentioned that. So Ouija board's one way, but how in general do people come across demons? Like how do demons find the people? I would say. I mean, if you're not doing Ouija board, how would it sort of happen? Right.
And that's a great point you just made too. Is like which came first, the chicken or the egg? I honestly think that demons roam around and are just looking, not to quote the, like scripture per se, but, demons looking to devour souls and ruin the souls of many. But basically these entities are looking for, like prime suspects or clients and victims to prey on. And oftentimes what happens is that, say all of a sudden somebody decides that they're going to try a drug and they start to form an addiction. Or maybe they had a severe traumatic event and they're holding on to this negative depression or attachment to the violent traumatic thing they experienced and they haven't resolved it. Or maybe there's sexual abuse or chronic illness, things like that. There's some sort of dysfunction going on with this person or family, and it seems to attract these demonic entities. So oftentimes I'll see these homes that are dysfunctional, like, they might be hoarders, the windows are like closed shut. There might be an alcoholic in the family. Maybe one of the adolescent kids or, one of their children and stuff is like suicidal or, things like that. There's a lot of negative energy going on within the dynamic of the family. And so that seems to really be a prime location, for demonic entities to reside in. And then they'll play off that and they'll make it worse. They'll amplify the whole problem in the household. But oftentimes, like 99% of the time, I'll find some sort of issue that's going on within the family. And I counsel with them and try to work through it before we do the house blessing. But, on rare occasions too, sometimes say a priest will all of a sudden be followed by a demon because demons, have egos and it's like a bragging right. Or say somebody has a chronic illness that'll follow them from the hospital. Or, there's times where people just move into a house and then there's a demon there for some reason, whether it was summoned there through like a satanic ritual or whatever. But more oftentimes than not, people attract demons to them. And sometimes people will meddle with the cult unprotected, things like that. And usually it's just negative energy in general, some sort of bad habit that brings them in.
Yeah, that must be really hard for you to determine, like, 'cause with all of that stuff going on, like, abuse or alcoholism and all those things. So you kind of have to figure out if it's maybe a problem, just a problem, or if it's demons. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Yeah. So now I noticed now your book called Fighting Malevolent Spirits. So your darkest encounters. What would you say your darkest encounter was? Or
ooh, that's a hard question. People always ask that. They're like, "What's the scariest thing you've experienced?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, it just depends. Like different things scare me for different reasons." But yeah, I put together like about 8 different chapters, and 7 of them, which were my experiences with demonic hauntings, and one of them is actually my mother's experience when she was younger. The one that bothered me the most, in terms of just like psychologically disturbing me, was one that it's never been solved and it's under my skin. And I thought it was important to include a chapter to show that like not everything's always a happy ending. I mean, 98% of the time it's a happy ending for people. But this case, it was actually involving an incubus or a succubus, which, I had read about, but I didn't know 100% if I believed in it. Like who believes in a demon that like sexually assaults people? Like how goofy does that sound? Until I'm sitting there with this family and I am hearing these reports of, violent sexual rapes and stuff. And they thought it was an amorous ghost and they thought it was a joke. And so they would kind of play games with this spirit. And then they formed a telepathic bond with it. Like the husband would say, perform whatever certain sexual act in his head, and then the entity would do it. And then it began molesting and assaulting the children in the family, and that just disturbed me so much. So I was like livid when it took one of the exorcists like 9+ weeks to deal with this case, and I was just like, oh my God, there's like a 14-year-old girl that's being assaulted, stuff like that really bothered me. And so we brought an exorcist. I contacted Lorraine Warren about that case as well too, and performed house blessings and stuff like that. And the case never got resolved, even after exorcisms and stuff like that. And it really bothered me because, I like to think everything can, be conquered. And but this family had formed such a bond with this entity by involving willingly sexually with this entity that like it was almost impossible to get rid of. And I also don't think the family's being 100% honest with their involvement with it. And another big reason why I think it didn't get resolved as well is because we didn't have all the children present for the house blessing. Like various people were missing from the household during the blessing. And so now I require everyone to be present the entire time there and to work through it together. Because there's a theory that demons can kind of like jump ship and go hang out with that person while they're away from the house and then return after the blessing. So you never really get rid of them. But yeah, their poor dog died. Their chinchilla died. Like all this other terrible stuff happened. And this was one of the same entities that actually visited me the morning of that house blessing before I left my own house. I was blow drying my hair in the bathroom, and there's a hallway, and down the hallway you can see into the living room and the kitchen. And it wasn't even in my peripheral. Like, it was fairly close, like an inch or two away from my direct line of sight. And I'm blow drying my hair upside down, and I'm looking down the hallway, and I see this, like, and this sounds crazy, but I swear to God, this is what I saw. Like 7-8 foot tall, lanky black shadow thing shoot extremely fast from the living room into the kitchen. And instantly the hairs on my body stood up, and I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was the entity. You know, it was only a couple hours until I had to leave for the house blessing, and it just wanted to show up, be like, hey, this is what you're dealing with. You know, like, come and try and get rid of me, you know, ha type thing, and try to scare me off. And it did shake me up. You know, I ran into the kitchen yelling at it because, you know, you got to put on this front, like, you know, that you're not going to stop no matter what, and try to be brave. But yeah, inside it does startle you, and it did scare me. So
and does any of that, has ever followed you home, or does any place you've gone to investigate and then later it's sort of trailed with you?
I think human spirits, like, before I really got into doing house blessings, like, I always bless my house, and I do it seasonally. And if I, like, for example, I just moved into a new house, blessed it recently, and I'll do period checkups and stuff like that. But before I did house blessings all the time, yeah, I'm pretty sure I had some human spirits follow me, but nothing evil. And I've never had a demonic entity follow me after a house blessing. They seem to go away. I don't know where they go, but they seem to be banished from that family, and then I'm not bothered anymore. It's always, the problem is always before the house blessing. It's like you can feel the tension rising, like even like a month to 2 or 3 weeks before a house blessing, it gets really bad. I don't get much sleep. You know, I'll get disturbed and stuff like that, and I'll have these entities try to show up, and it's very brief. It's like they can't stay in the house for very long. And I like to think that's because it's been blessed. So, but they still seem to pop in once in a blue moon. That's happened twice. And it's very upsetting because you want to think it's like your safe haven, you know, you're like, oh, it's my safe little cave, you know, my safe house. But then you have these intruders. And so it's upsetting. Yeah. Yeah.
No, so now I've got something. What do you, this is kind of a little bit off, but it's
Sure.
not. Because the only reason is because I've had people that have sent messages about this, about the, what's your feeling about witches?
Like in terms of like dark magic or like bad stuff, or just people that practice like Wicca or,
Well, kind of, I'm probably, not so much Wicca, more probably earth or herb witches, because, you know, it's like, for instance, I've got one email here that said, that she, had a witch. She had a demon she believed in, and this witch performed give her a spell on her to take the demon away, and a cleansing spell or something like that. Here, is that sort of something you've come across, or you think it sort of works, or what?
I worked with one person that was more so Wiccan than pagan. And I've actually read a case too where they had like a warlock, like a male witch, come into the household and was actually able to remove a demonic spirit. I think whatever religion you are a part of, if you are working on behalf of good, that's all I can ask for. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's able to remove a demon, something evil and dark, from somebody's life and to get rid of it, to me, that's an act of kindness and love and divine. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I try not to go into religion because I don't want to offend people. Like I was raised a Christian, and I have a very universal view. Like I accept and appreciate everyone's views, except for Satanists, obviously. But yeah, it's, you know, I think it clearly says that, you know, we are all God's children, and that's how I view it. I really do. And I think that God, divine spirit, creator, Allah, whatever that divine creator is, has many names across the world. And so, you know, obviously these people that have evolved on different continents, different civilizations, are going to have different practices and different concepts of what God is. But if the core of what the entity is that they're trying to do or something like that is light and love, like, to me, that's God, and that's all I ask for. So I don't really have a problem with people that are practicing a different religion, just as long as it's not harming somebody or going against someone else's will. And I'm certainly happy if they're able to get rid of like a demonic entity. Like, to me, I'm delighted. The more help, the merrier. And we need more people working in this line, spiritual warfare. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And another one I get quite a few I've got emails here about, I don't think this, but they, questions about, like, they smell the scents of perfumes and things like that, and they around them and stuff. That's not typical of a demon, stuff like that, is it?
Not nice smells.
No.
It's like putrid, disgusting. Like, if you can smell, like, 1,000 rotting bodies or something, just rotten flesh, burnt rubber, or the smell of burning is very common, but usually like putrid, nauseating smells that really knock you to your knees. That happens often with demonic cases, and obviously there's no explanation. It's not something in the fridge that went bad, or it's in a really random location, like the bedroom, things like that. When you can't explain it and you experience putrid smells like that, those are pretty common for demonic hauntings. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as a demonologist on your side and being in investigations, what's your sort of take on mediums?
Like psychic mediums. Honestly, you'll get people that debate this, and I hate to go back into religion and stuff like that, but if people are Christian and they've read the Bible, it says very clearly in Corinthians, the gifts of spirit and the gifts of discerning, meaning there's two different types of spirit too, demons and human spirits. But when you look, I think it's honestly a gift from God, and I think there's fakes. There's a lot of phonies. Like, I had this one medium. Oh my God, this woman, I don't know what she was channeling, probably something dark, but, she made me cry during a reading, and she was just being vicious and greedy, and like, it was a terrible experience. But, out of like that, the one time I've had a bad experience, all the other readings I've ever had have been amazing. And I think psychics and mediums, when they connect with their loved ones, I think it reaffirms their beliefs about life after death. It's a calming, therapeutic thing. It's healing and loving, when we're able to hear from our loved ones. And so in terms of like research and stuff, I think mediums are helpful. They're a helpful tool in providing evidence that we might not be able to collect with our scientific means, like using a digital voice recorder. We might capture a spirit voice, but when you have a medium, they can connect directly with spirits and angels and stuff like that. So, but no, I don't have a problem with them as long as they are, working on behalf of God and sharing their gift to help other people. And they're not charging like, $1,000 for a reading or $1,000 to get rid of a demon from your house, like some of them do. Then I'm happy. It just depends. But there are fakes. There's frauds out there, like Miss Cleo. And, so they do exist. But I do believe there's a lot of gifted people here that we shouldn't demonize. A lot of people think it's like evil somehow. But if they're able to speak on behalf of God or the angels to help give you life guidance or connect you with your loved ones, I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
Do you ever find yourself going to one?
Yeah, I've gone several times. One was we were putting together a show, and I really did want to find the best. I didn't want some scam artist, And throughout my life, there's been times where I really wish that God spoke to us, like on a billboard, being like, Sam, go do this. And like, thank you. That's all I need. Like, it's something blatantly obvious, smack me up inside the head with it, and then I'll know what to do. But, God's mysterious. God doesn't always speak to us directly like that. And so I think I found myself getting a couple readings, trying to make a right decision. Like, should I honestly get this book published? Am I meant to really publish this book about demonology and stuff like that? Would it even work? Things like that, where I was at a crossroads in my life about a certain decision, and the mediums helped me connect with, angels and divine spirits to be able to decide what to do. And I've never had any bad advice. They've never led me astray. And it's always, trying to do God's work that they've led me towards. And so I've been very happy with the readings I've received.
Good. Okay. Well, we're going to take another short break. We'll be back after this. We're back now, and when we left, we were sort of getting into some of the different other ways of other people investigating, like witches and things like that, and how they do it. What's your step-by-step process, sort of, when you get an investigation coming up?
So typically people will contact me through the website or directly through an email. And oftentimes, I usually don't get phone calls because I do like to keep my number private. And like I mentioned before to some people, otherwise you get calls at like all hours of the morning, and you want to try to live somewhat of a normal life. So they'll contact me for a request and, briefly describe in their message what kind of experiences they're having. Other times people are convinced that they have a demon already. And so you still have to be skeptical, like maybe it's not a demon. And a lot of people are scared and just assume it's demonic. But so you still have to go through the process to make sure it is in fact, or if it's not. And so after that, I'll respond to their email. And usually we'll have like a phone conference or, anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours on the phone, kind of going through a history and pinpointing, where it originated from, this haunting, and the characteristics is a big part of the discussion, trying to see if it is demonic or if it's just a human spirit. And then from that point, we'll usually set up a schedule or a time for myself, and if I have my partner, and usually I'll bring a partner and assistant on demonic cases with me, just because number one, it's nice to have a backup and moral support and things like that too, but also safety reasons. So then after that point, we'll actually go to the house and meet with the family or the client and sit and counsel with them, and that's the biggest part. And it's not like some boring shrink appointment like a lot of people would think. You got the shrink couch that they're sitting on or something, and I'm analyzing their thoughts. It's more so talking about what pain or negative habits going on in the family, like what can we work on to heal and resolve to get rid of this attachment. Because when somebody is an alcoholic or has these negative habits, it gives an attachment or a reason to be attached to that person for the demon. And so once we heal and work through that and bring it out into the open, say the person's alcoholism, and we come up with a solution or a plan, like, hey, let's just start by cutting back on it, or, don't be drinking at home type thing, stuff like that. When we actually work on how to heal the family and acknowledging maybe the pain that's been caused by the alcoholic in the family, and really get the family working together as a team, that is a huge part, in my opinion, of why the entity actually is able to be cast out in the end. And so from that point, then I use like a Christian, Catholic, Native American, and sometimes South American method, where everyone burns white sage. So I do that. I'm very, very thorough about it. And I also use sea salt or just regular salt, olive oil. Sometimes I use a thing called Palo Santo, which is like holy wood, and that's more South American method, and holy water. And the biggest thing that I like to end the house blessing with is a thing called the warfare prayer. And it's actually been designed in a way so it's non-denominational, so almost everyone can use this prayer. But the warfare prayer is great in that it denounces any involvement or any reasons for this demon to have an attachment to this family. This person's claiming back their life, their body, their finances, their home, their happiness, everything you can think of. If there's been a curse, we're getting rid of that, all sorts of stuff. And really asking our divine creator to come into the house and to remove any evil from it. And, I've had skeptics that were with me, and I've had believers as well. And many of them, almost all of them, can feel the difference once the entity leaves. And it might not even be at the end of the house blessing. Sometimes in the beginning, it leaves already. And you can just feel the difference. It's like if the house were dark and dirty, and all of a sudden the windows are opened up and the house just takes a giant sigh or breath of relief, and it's a beautiful, happy feeling. Like all of a sudden light comes into the home. That's the sensation.
Yeah. So do you typically, are you doing investigations now that are not demonic, or are you just doing regular?
To be honest, I did take a little bit of a break. I haven't worked directly actually going to a case that was demonic in several months. I mean, we went through a family crisis, all this other crazy stuff too. And honestly, sometimes I really did think it was linked and revolved around some of the previous demonic cases I'd worked on. And, I'd mentioned these things take a toll and mysterious illnesses and stuff like that. And so there is a part of you that kind of worries. It's like, gosh, do I really want to keep working in this field? Is it going to kill me in the end, And, because we've had a lot of weird stuff happen over the last several years, especially this last year, I would say. So I'm still working on cases. I've actually been asked to fly out to a case out in Pennsylvania And hopefully when I get a little bit more free time and possibly if we're filming by then, they'd be interested in having us film the case. And it's something that's been lifelong for this person, so there's not like an urgency to it in their mind. So that's kind of good, because usually I'll try to prioritize which case is more severe, which one needs help the most or the soonest. So I'm still working on stuff too. It's just I tried to tone it down a bit, because otherwise it'd be every weekend. It just gets intense. So
too much work, no play.
Right.
No, so and who do you find as an influence in the business? Who do you look up to or respect, or is there someone that you follow or study, or someone you have to kind of keep an eye on in the business?
I would have to say, I haven't had too many role models in my life, aside from like my mother. I love her. But Lorraine Warren, ever since I was a little girl, I was just like, oh my gosh, like Lorraine Warren's such an amazing lady. Her and her husband were just a phenomenal researcher and demonologist in the field, and really made so much progress. But after getting to talk to Lorraine, she invited me out to lunch with her, I think when she was was it Windsor? She was somewhere in Canada, and I didn't have my passport renewed. So I was like, oh crap, I got to scurry and go get my passport renewed, because I'm going to go have lunch with Lorraine in Canada and hopefully get some answers for this case that was really bothering me. Anyways, turns out I had to film for the Travel Channel, so I had to make a choice. I was like, do I film something and teach people, a certain thing on television, or do I go get to have lunch with Lorraine Warren? But it turned out also I couldn't get my driver's license or passport renewed in time to get the what is it called, enhanced driver's thing. So I could get into Canada, but I wouldn't be able to come back into the U.S. So I had to choose not to see Lorraine. But she is the sweetest woman that I've ever met in this field, and just such a loving soul. Like, she's so powerful too. That's what I think is amazing. Some people might see this, beautiful, cute little elderly lady, but Lorraine's like a powerhouse, in my opinion. The stuff that she's been through and the things that she's battled through, like I admire that. And to put her life and safety on the line to help other people, to me, that's just admirable. And so I've always looked up to Lorraine Warren and her work, and she was just the sweetest thing ever. And I mentioned it in my book too, is when I called her, she answered the phone and started choking on her orange juice. And it got to the point where I was like, oh my God, Lorraine, like hang up the phone, because I literally thought she was going to choke to death. And I was like, oh God, the paranormal community is like never going to forgive me if like Lorraine's choking on the phone with me. So, but yeah, she's just a pleasure. And hopefully one day I'll get to meet her in person. It'd just be such an honor. And, she's been very influential in this work, I would say.
Well, now it's been an interesting talk here. And I thought what I'd do is finish off if you want to give your sort of contact information.
Sure. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, the website that I use, that's honestly the best way to get a hold of me, is www.michiganpra.com, as in Michigan Paranormal Research Association. Or they can email me directly at mpra@live.com. We've got plenty of Facebook fan pages if you just look up Michigan Paranormal Research Association, and different groups. And I've got, an authors page on Facebook and other stuff like that too, and social media links, and lots of video and evidence for people to look at on the website. So if anyone wants to get a hold of me there, you're more than welcome to contact me. And if you're looking to get a good deal on the book, I always tell people, I think you get like $1.07 off or something if you go to Amazon.com and order Fighting Malevolent Spirits, a Demonologist's Darkest Encounter, or it's available through like Barnes and Nobles and the publisher Llewellyn. Anyways, but yeah, it's been such a pleasure, and I appreciate it, Alan. This is a great talk.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or shows, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.